Hi, welcome to this episode. Today we're going to talk about dates and times in Python and just discuss some of the differences between the storage of dates inside the code and the storage in files. So here's the code we're going to look at first. It's the Datetime module code. Just going to switch to Visual Studio Code, put in there some of the beginnings of this. And we'll just use these first two lines. We're going to import the datetime module itself. We're going to get the date time. And we'll do one more thing, which is print it out so you can see what now looks like in datetime formats. Okay, so now we've run this, and you should be able to see it's run this software. And here's the output. So it's printed now, which is the 6th of July 2021, and the time 10, 11 and 27 seconds and 0.332756 seconds down to millionths of a second. Each of the components of a datetime object can be accessed individually. So I'll just go and show how. So this is a set of print statements which are going to print out each of the pieces of the time. The year, month, day, hour, minute and second. I'll talk about weekday in a tick. So this is that code running. We print out at the same time the year, the month, the day. This one, weekday, is 1, so today is a Tuesday, and in datetime numbers that's day 1 of the week. So day 0 is Monday and day 6 is Sunday. It's also 10 in the morning, 12 minutes past 10, 42 seconds, and it's rounded off to those millionths of a second. What's not shown here is time zones. So you can, if you want to, use time zone settings to set the time zone that the time is recorded in. So for example, now it's British summertime in the UK. You might want to set it in East Coast time in the US, or in Western Australian time in Western Australia, so that you record what the time was more absolutely rather than just the time in a particular country. It can help with daylight saving, the difference between BST and GMT. And bear in mind that within most time packages, GMT is called UTC, Universal Time. And the final thing to think about is that this is an object. So when you create a datetime object, like we've done with datetime.now, what's stored in right now is an object which has all these methods and field access mechanisms. When you write that to a file, it becomes a text object often, not always, but often, and we'll go into some details about how to convert to and from text object. If we move on to the next example, what we're going to look at is how to write date objects to CSV files using Pandas. There's a whole range of ways of doing this, but we're going to create a small data frame and write it to a CSV file, and then you should see what that looks like in a second. So going back to Visual Studio, this is the second example. We're still importing datetime, but we're also going to import pandas as PD. We're going to get the date now, and we're going to extract the date from that, just the date, not the time, so that we can create a list of dates. And this next line does that. It's a pandas built-in function to create a range, a list of numbers. And here we're giving it a date and asking it to create 10 more dates from that date. Well, 10 in total, 9 in addition to that original date. So that gives us a list of dates from whenever now is to 10 days in the future. The second one list here is value list, and that creates a list just of numbers from 0 to 9, the range 10. So that's 2 lists, and that gives us enough information to create a pandas data frame. And that's this one here. We're going to create a new data frame. We're going to give it a column of dates and a column of values, and we should see when we run this that that's what's been printed out. So here's the printout of that data frame. It's got one column with dates and one column of values. This number down the side here, 0 to 9, is the pandas row index number, which is automatically generated in pandas for data frames. Okay, so now we want to write this out to a file. Before we do that, we'll just check something. And the thing we're going to check is that we can run various operations on datetime objects, and one is it has built-in arithmetic. So if you subtract two dates, it should give you the difference between those two dates in days. And then here we write out to a test data file all of that data frame we just saw. So let's run this again. We should see now the same data frame. We'll look in a second to check it's in the file. And this is the output of that calculation I just did, 5 days apart. We have no time information, so it's no hours, no minutes, and no seconds apart. Okay, if I pull this out, the test data file is here, and this is how that data has been stored in a CSV file. So there's a date down here, there's a value down here. The dates are purely text strings at this point. So if you went into the file, you couldn't do arithmetic on these, and that will be important in the next example where we show you how to read these back in again. So this is the same data file we just wrote. We're going to read this back in with read CSV. We're going to try and do some arithmetic on the dates, and then we're going to have to run some conversions to actually make this work. So what this should do is read in the test data file we've just saved, tell us the types and the values in there, and try and do this arithmetic on the dates in that new data frame it creates. It's read in the data frame correctly, it's built it, and it looks identical to the one it saved out, but you'll see here that the type, the date, is object, and it should be a datetime object, and that's a string. So when we come to do this calculation here, it gives unsupported type because you can't subtract one string from another, it doesn't know what they are. To this we can add in some extra code, and if we do this with this line of code, we can get back our datetime objects. So this relies on a Pandas utility function, toDatetime, which automatically looks at date strings and converts them back again. Click go. And you can see the output now from this version. Same data frame, it looks like the same data frame, but in fact now the date is correctly datetime, and we can correctly calculate they're 5 days apart. Okay, so that's the thing to watch out for. Whenever you're reading in CSV files in any tool, remember that the stored date is going to be a text string, not a date object, and you'll need to do some work to convert it. Next, I'm just going to quickly look at formatting and doing the conversion explicitly of a datetime object to a string. And this you often find useful for printing out datetime objects, using them in labels for graphs. And I'm going to do the reverse as well. How do you go from a string back to a datetime object using built-in functions? Again, I'm going to switch to Visual Studio Code. We don't need the sidebar. And this piece of code here is simply going to get the time, print it out, formatted, print it, and formatted, print it in 2 different ways. So the formatted printing is going to use this called string formatted time converter, which takes a datetime object and a formatting string, creates a string based on the format you've given it. So %d will fill in the day, m the month, and y the year, and the slashes will be a slash format. In the second example, if you look at what these codes mean in the documentation, it gives a name for Monday, a day date, a numeric day date for the day, and B stands for the name of the month, and Y for the year. So here's the output. If you print the datetime object as a raw object, you get all the details, the date and the time down to the minutes of the seconds. With the first formatting, we've got the day, the month, and the year separated by slashes. With the second formatting, we've got Tuesday, the 6th of July, 2021, separated by spaces. And all of that is controlled by these formatting strings here and here. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can turn dates into strings for printing and saving and all sorts. Now, we're going to start over and just show you how to go the other way. So this example is going to show you how to go from a string to a date time, and it's also going to pick up a real problem in dates internationally, that there's no standardization for the way around days and months as numbers are put, and typically software will assume the American convention, which is different to the UK one. So here we're starting with a string, a date string, character string, representing a date and a time in fact. We're going to use string ptime to take that date string and the formatting and create a date object. The formatting says how exactly to interpret this incoming string, what characters I expect, including spaces. So you've got to get this formatting exactly the same as the incoming string for it to work. And then we should get a date object. This conversion is kind of what toDatetime was doing when we used it earlier for the whole data frame that we'd built for every date value in the row. So it's going from, but it was guessing the formatting. It was going from a character string to a guessed format into a datetime object for us. So let's run this. This is the output from the code. The code itself didn't have a time, so it's just put 0 in there. When we've converted the string with the time, it's correctly converted that to 1231. And the thing to watch out for is if you use toDatetime in Pandas, it assumes the order of the month and the day are in American order. And when you print this out in the ISO order, which is standardized, you will get what you think is the day as a month and what you think is a month as the day. And so to get around that, you can do what the code does in the second example of using toDatetime, which is give it a formatting string and make sure you explicitly tell it what the month and the day are. So that's just something that will at some point trip you up, I'm sure, because it trips me up all the time, reading in dates and getting the month and the days the right way around. So here, back at the PowerPoints, this is just a summary of the code, formatting the datetime values as strings, converting strings to datetime objects using formatting statements, and the error, potential error, if your dates are not in the ISO standard format or in the UK format, and you end up with them interpreted as American format dates. Great, that's the end then for datetime objects, and I'll see you again soon.